voice actors from your favorite anime, video games, and cartoons are playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition every Wednesday on a new podcast called The Dungeon Booth. The first 11 episodes bring together the English voice actors from the hit anime series My Hero Academia, including the voices of Eraserhead, Charge Bolt, Mandalay of the Wild Wild Pussycats, and the Invisible Girl. In the Dungeon Booth, these voice actors become original player characters in a wheels-off D&D adventure full of combat, discovery, intrigue, amateurish attempts at romance, and professionally timed fart jokes. And when each game ends, the next game begins with an all-new entertaining cast of voice actors ready to jump into the booth. So go listen today and every Wednesday on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, or on their website at thedungeonbooth.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the Dungeoncast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Will.
This is the podcast where we talk about everything Dungeons & Dragons, from mystical mice to marvelous marksmen, and today we're talking about mimics.
The Dungeoncast. All right, Brian. It's getting close to Christmas time, and I figured in honor of the holidays, why don't we talk about the monster that likes to disguise itself as the most tantalizing present there is? Treasure chest.
Treasure. Gold. All gold.
Indeed. So we're going to talk about mimics. They're
Greedy
actually,
adventurers beware.
it's a very classic D&D monster. It's actually a Gary Gygax original from the original Monster Manual of First Edition. And mimics are essentially these shape-shifting predators that are able to take on the form of inanimate objects.
Right.
Usually something tantalizing to humanoids to lure creatures to them and then devour them.
The Venus flytrap of adventurers.
Yeah, sure. Most famously, mimics will disguise themselves as treasure chests, but they can also take the form of doors, wardrobes, or generally any object made of stone or wood.
Yes, paranoia of doors. The leading cause, I would say, is mimics.
That and traps.
Secondly, to booby traps.
Yeah, indeed. So D&D mimics are... They have kind of a low intelligence, but they have this primitive cunning to them and like an insidious method of capturing their prey. They specifically hunt adventurers by finding well-traveled locations and disguising themselves as these desirable objects.
And don't forget about the most impressive thing is staying very still.
Right.
Don't trust anything that can stay that still.
Indeed. And they're able to choose to become objects that really match the location.
Will, I'm going to be asking you some hard questions.
Okay.
Because I think that's what this monster calls for.
Yeah.
You just let me know when you want to continue talking about what's in your notes after I derail us.
Okay.
Organs of the mimic. Mm-hmm. Do they transform into the inanimate disguise, or do they get rearranged inside of that thing?
So the way it's described is the disguise is very much an exterior thing.
Okay.
We'll get into the anatomy of the mimics a little bit, or what limited things that I have to talk about it, because there's a lot left up to DM discretion, but we'll get to that.
Okay, I think I'm gonna change what my first strategy for my part in this episode. Okay. I'm gonna wait for you to hit some of these things in the notes and try to ask a relevant thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's do it.
So the thing I was talking about, they have this weird primitive kind of cunning where they're capable of like looking at their surroundings and then becoming something that really matches the location, and they can hold their form without stirring for weeks on end.
That's like it reminds me of whales, like taking a breath and then going underwater for like a month.
I guess there's a similarity there. When a creature inevitably falls for the disguise and touches the mimic, the creature that touches them will become stuck to wherever they made contact, because all mimics exude a sticky adhesive on their entire bodies. And they have control over their adhesive. They can choose when it activates and when it doesn't.
Oh, wow. That's cool. So
they never get stuck to themselves, and they can choose when things are stuck or not.
So you can't be like going around throwing gravel at doors and shit. It won't work like that.
Yeah, it won't work like that, no. At this point, the mimic will then produce an enormous mouth and pseudopods to beat the thing to death and then eat it.
That's just like...
like an ooze.
It's kind of like an ooze mixed with the Kelpie.
Yeah, it's like an ooze mixed with a Kelpie, and
there's no official stat block for Kelpie, right?
There isn't.
There's a cool monster in like European
Scottish
lore
and Celtic mythology called Kelpie,
where it imitates a beautiful horse or whatever, and
then if you get on it, you become stuck to it,
and it walks into the lake,
and eats you,
and you die.
So that's how mimics kind of do their thing. They're most commonly found in underground dungeons. In the earlier editions, they made a very big point to say that mimics were strictly subterranean, saying that they had sunlight sensitivity due to they didn't have eyes, they had eye spots that they used for sensing heat, light, and vibration.
Nice.
And that these spots were extra sensitive and couldn't handle being in like bright light.
They say that's how the eye evolved over time. Is at one point it was just a sensor that could pick up light.
Yeah, and I've heard that very much.
And
so
the thing would go to the surface of the ocean and eat the algae and then go back down.
Right.
Yeah.
So mimics were originally labeled as aberrations, from the far realm, which is pretty fitting. I mean, they're bizarre and completely alien and mysterious.
As in aberrant, like abnormal. Okay.
Yeah, and it's not really said exactly how they look. They do get later on and are currently recategorized as monstrosities. Okay. And the explanation here...
That's neither here nor there, really, other than like the D&D classification of such things.
True. And as is the case with a lot of the monstrosities, we haven't really talked about a lot of the monstrosities yet. Things like manticores and hydras.
Well, I mean, we talk about them a lot, but we haven't done an episode.
Yeah, we haven't done episodes on a lot of these things, like chimeras and all this stuff. And one of the things that monstrosities tend to have in common is a lot of times their origin is chalked up to like mad wizard experimentation,
right,
or magic gone wrong.
Basically, these are the mini bosses,
kinda, to a certain degree, and mimics very much. That's kind of their current origin now. Is like they're just the result of experimentations gone wrong. But as for like mimic longevity or reproduction cycles, nothing is really stated too much. Depends on your setting. Some settings do have some concrete lore there, which we'll talk about in a bit.
I heard that they reproduce asexually, kind of like a beholder, when they can't decide if they want to be a door or a chest. So then they just split and become both things.
I actually kind of like that. I think that's really cool.
Really? Because I'm just bullshitting.
Yeah, no, I know you are, but I think that's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
And fission is one of the ways that it's said they can reproduce. There's a lore that says they reproduce via spores.
Ew, what?
Yeah,
oh,
so
no.
like there's all kinds of stuff. We'll get into it a little bit later.
Okay.
So, where was I? The thing about mimics is they're one of those old school D&D monsters that are popular and everyone knows what they are and likes them, but no one ever asks any fucking questions about them. And because of that, the lore never gets fleshed out.
Right. Like in game, if you run into a mimic, it's like, oh, this is bound to happen eventually.
Yeah. The last time there was an ecology of the mimic article written in Dragon Magazine?
Oh, it has to be probably when they were putting out the old ass magazines.
Yeah, in Dragon Magazine 74, which I think it was actually put together by Ed Greenwood, who's like the major creator behind Forgotten Realms. But I mean, this was back in the 70s or early 80s. That was the last time there was a write up on mimics.
Holy shit!
So yeah, this is just one of those monsters that got written up and then no one touched it again.
Well, yeah, it's a classic. It's like trying to explain Lay's potato chips to somebody, I guess, or like a Coca-Cola.
Right, exactly.
Like if you're American, you know what those are, and even if you're not.
Regardless of this, I'm going to do my best to explain.
Well, I mean, this is good. I'm ready. We're going to re-up the fucking licensing on mimics or whatever.
I guess so.
No, that's not how that works.
So another thing that so it kind of comes down to DM discretion. So like maybe mimics are from the far realm in your world. Maybe they do reproduce asexually via spores. Maybe they're biologically immortal. It's up to you because there really isn't lore written down for a lot of this stuff. One of the things I'm a fan of, because normally mimics are depicted as like being like reclusive or like in the far-flung places of the world.
Yeah, I mean they're in the dark depths of a dungeon disguised as a chest.
Right. I really like the idea of mimics actively attempting to infiltrate like populated areas.
Ooh.
And like I picture like a statue in the center of a market square that at some point got replaced by a mimic. And it remains there undetected for years, but everyone in the city just thinks that the square is like haunted, and like they know that anyone who wanders around there at night, like vagrants or children who get lost, or anybody who wanders there at night, sometimes they just disappear, and people think like some spirit got them.
That's
but no,
good.
It's the mimic in the middle of the town square.
So can I offshoot real quick?
Yeah, sure.
I don't like to talk about this so much on the show, but I run a superhero game on our Patreon.
Right.
And my players were really paranoid of a mimic in like they were just like, what's this chest doing in the middle of the room? And it's filled with candles because this is like a candlelit place. And I kind of teased it like, you walk up to it, like I played on their paranoia because it was ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But
I know
it's
that
so real at the same time. Like, what if it is a mimic? But they shouldn't know. Like they were out of character a little bit. So they rolled a nature check. Like, is this a mimic? I was like, no, it's a chest. Like what? And they rolled a history check. Like, what do I know about mimics? And I was like, oh, that's weird. Mm-hmm. And I ended up being like, okay, one of my guys works for a construction company, and he's like, they were going to do a demo on a building, and they were there to oversee like the things being taken out of it. Mm-hmm. And one of the guys, one of the social workers or whatever it was that went into the house, went into the basement and got attacked by a mimic that was a door.
Oh shit.
And that's what you've seen is they killed it and brought it out on and like to do research on it. And it's an urban setting. And I was like, oh, that would be cool one day to figure out like how did this shit get it? Who is this person that died and how did they get into the mimic into this shit?
Right.
So that's a cool thing. Like, oh, I didn't think like, that's good. I didn't know if it was a thing or not. I just was like BSing when I came up with that.
Yeah, there's so little written that kind of whatever you do is canon enough because like there's, it's just a monster. Do with it what you will.
That's interesting.
So anything you did was totally awesome.
That's cool.
So let's talk a little bit about 4th edition because 4th edition is going to do as 4th edition does and give you some real fucking defined mimic lore.
Okay,
and it's also really good.
Yeah, they do that.
They do that. They do the thing that I wish that the other editions would do. It's like no, define it. Like tell me about it.
Yeah.
Because no matter what the book says, I can always do whatever I want.
Yeah.
But I love getting really good ideas from the canon lore.
And their philosophy is to write to give you that wiggle room.
Indeed.
And it like you said, you can do both.
So in 4th edition, mimics are strictly aberrations and they're from the far realm and they are actively and insidiously attempting to infiltrate settled humanoid lands because they have incredibly high intelligence levels.
And they're really hungry.
And they're incredibly hungry. So their concept is to infiltrate settled lands by humanoids as harmless objects, and they actively hunt down sentient creatures and eat them.
Wow.
And so furthermore...
For kicks.
Yeah, 4E introduces this idea of a higher level mimic known as an impersonator mimic. So as an object mimic, which is your regular mimic, devours prey. It absorbs memories of its victims, and it gains knowledge and learns how to speak different languages slowly.
It's the fucking Chimera from Full Metal Alchemist.
Is that what happens with the Chimera in Full Metal Alchemist?
Well, kind of. Like I took some liberty, but like you fuse the creature and the person or whatever. Right. Slight spoiler, but they gain like this weird in between intelligence. But if you keep fusing it with intelligence, eventually you get like a really high intelligence result.
Right.
I'm figuring this is like it sounds like that.
This is kind of like that.
Just absorbing your powers.
So as they keep eating and growing and they mature and they'll eventually gain enough knowledge to become what's called an impersonator mimic that can take on the form of the victims that it's devoured and will use the guise of these humanoid victims to infiltrate society, eat more prey, and eventually the impersonator mimic will end up splitting off and giving off mimic spawn.
Oh my god!
Which will then go forth into the world
and become mimes.
Start the cycle again. No, but they'll start the cycle again.
This is why we're scared of mimes.
I really like this because this is almost like this is a pseudo invasion of the body snatchers kind of deal where it's like this alien species comes in and starts infiltrating, eating people, becoming people, and then spreading.
And they do that thing with the rope and the fake wall for change on the street.
What?
They're mimes.
Oh, God. Damn it. Anyways, short rest time. Let's go.
Hey everybody, welcome to the part of the episode we're not talking about the last thing we're talking about. We're talking about this new thing. And it's really not that new because it's been going on for a long time. It's how much I love you.
I think it's like 2 years of love.
It's 2 years of just, it's like picture a small snowball rolling down a mountain and causing an avalanche. But it's not really an avalanche, just one big snowball of love. Get picked up in my snowball of love.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
wait, don't you love them too, right?
Of course I do, Brian. I've said this many times.
You got to keep saying it.
I adore our audience. I cherish them greatly.
We do this to tell them.
Indeed.
Okay, so let's talk about TDC Plays, a brand new thing that Will is spearheading on another YouTube channel that is not on the Dungeoncast, but is affiliated heavily with the Dungeoncast.
Indeed it is. And it's called TDC Plays, and we'll have the link in the description below. And it's basically us here at the Dungeoncast playing video games, and you can join us and listen to our bizarre conversations as we kill things in zombie games and play Pokemon and all that other jazz.
Do you like watching people play video games on the internet? Do you like the people you hear on the Dungeoncast? You can have both things at once.
Indeed
Go to
you can.
TBC Plays, the YouTube channel, and check that out.
Please do.
And, I think that's it. Let's get back to the show.
Let's get back to the show. We're back.
Wow, it's true.
Those short rests are getting so short.
Welcome
Love
back.
it.
Welcome to the new format of the show, everybody.
Indeed. Okay, so now that we're back, let's talk a little bit about some different variants of mimics that are out there. We talked about the Impersonator Mimic from 4E. I think that would be really cool. Transfer from 4E to 5E. Also, I just like that 4E lore. It's really fucking scary, and like before
That's
that,
true.
there was really no good mimic lore, and there still kind of isn't much.
Yeah,
but
there's the vague initial establishment of mimic lore, and it's also probably the best way to explain mimes in your D&D universe.
Indeed. So, well, maybe not. I say indeed too much. I just let you get away with murder on this show, I swear. Okay, so one of the variants I want to talk about is from early first edition. It actually is completely unnamed. It doesn't have a name. I'm calling it the Friendly Mimic, but the idea was, and it's stated in the original monster manual, that there were two versions of the mimic. One was the killer mimic, which is like the regular mimic, the one that attacks you.
One's
and
the
then
giving tree.
An unnamed smaller version that's considered to be much more intelligent and less aggressive. And these versions of mimics were much more likely to have social interaction with player characters.
They're building communities.
They were usually willing to bargain and trade for information on like things they witnessed in their dungeon in return for food.
Oh, nice. Like, feed me your dry rations.
Like, greetings, traveler.
Oh, nice.
Do you have any rations with you?
When I took this form, I swallowed a golden medallion.
There you go.
It can allow you to roll a 20 or a 1 once a day.
There you go.
Yeah.
See, there you go. Trade, barter.
Yeah,
So-
give me that thing. Cool.
So that's the Friendly Mimic, and I think it's pretty cool. I actually haven't seen it utilized. But
It's a fun little
yeah,
NPC
it's
for a
fun little
dungeon.
NPC, exactly. Yeah. So the next mimic variant that we're going to talk about is called the Metal Mimic. This one is also from first edition. And so originally in first edition, when it came to mimics, the idea was that mimics could only transform themselves into objects of stone or wood.
Oh.
And so the Metal Mimic was this souped up version that could do those things, but also specialize in taking various forms of things that are made of metal. So ore deposits or actual metallic objects.
It's like the story arc of Avatar: The Last Airbender into Legend of Korra, where just like there's so much metal bending by the time you get to the end of it.
Right. Okay. I can see that
Yeah.
parallel. So another thing these metal mimics were capable of doing was exuding light from its body.
Oh, that's cool.
So I pictured like basically looking like a really cool mystical ore deposit that's glowing. It's
That's
like,
neat.
Yeah, you
It's-
know the players are about to check that shit out.
Yeah, it's like rearranging the molecules in its body to be phosphorescent or something
Yeah,
like that.
exactly, sure.
Neat.
And then rather than attack with pseudopods, it just transforms its pseudopods into like swords and daggers and slices at you. So that's terrifying.
I was gonna say, what is stopping this mimic from? I guess you can make your mimic look like whatever, right? Like this
yeah.
chest grows legs, and like its sidewall extends into an arm that is just ends in a sword.
Yeah, exactly. God, that's a terrifying visage. I love that. That's so scary. Just like two sword arms on a chest that's crawling at you on four legs. Like, it's horrifying.
I didn't even think of it as a quadruped. I thought of it as like an awkward, like flamingo style.
Oh, no,
like,
I was definitely going quadruped on that one.
just
but
like running, but its arms are swords, and so the chop motion it's doing is
Yeah.
really threatening.
that's super fucking dope. I really love that. So,
Aren't they normally depicted with like having a crazy fucking mouth with teeth? and
yeah,
stuff?
like a cartoonish mouth, with
like
giant
one
teeth and a
eye,
tongue.
like
Yeah.
a shark eye.
So the way I picture mimics in their like true form is because they're just basically described as having amorphous bodies.
Right.
So for me, it's like they're just oozes with eye spots and an enormous mouth. So that's what I think they probably look like outside of their transformation.
Man, I really want to make a reference to Frieza. This
What?
isn't even my final form.
Oh yeah. Well,
Frieza's
the
a
mimics don't
mimic?
have
I
final
don't
forms.
think that's the thing.
No, that's
I
not how
don't
that
think
works.
that's
So the final variant mimic that we're going to speak about today is called the Space Mimic. Now, this is a mimic that was created specifically for the Spelljammer campaign setting, and actually has just a tinge bit more lore than your regular mimic when it comes to the canon.
Galileo was looking through a telescope and he saw light bending in space, and he was like, "What is that?" And it's not space; it's just imitating space.
So Spelljammer is a campaign setting where there's kind of a version of space travel. It's not the same as like our space travel. It's because they don't like, there aren't solar systems and stars and all that. There's just what are they called? I forget what they're called. They're crystal spheres or something like that. But basically, each material plane is like a planet protected by like a crystal sphere, and all these crystal spheres are floating around in what's called wild space.
Oh, like Kingdom Hearts.
It's like Kingdom Hearts. There we go. That's great. That's why we have you on the show. So yeah, it's like Kingdom Hearts, and but these vessels called space jammers are developed so that they can travel between all these different realms.
Nice.
And floating out there in wild space, sometimes you can come across a space mimic. So these mimics were originally created via magical experimentation to act as guardians for treasure hoards upon space vessels. For some unexplained reason, the space mimics proved to be unfit for their line of work, like they weren't reliable enough. So they ended up, the original like strain of them that were created were just kind of hurled off into space. Just they were thrown away.
But they're biologically immortal.
Right. Well, okay. So because of their thick hides and their resilience, and they don't need to breathe, they managed to survive, and they actually reproduce via fission. So they split like a cell.
Okay.
And in order to survive, these mimics transform themselves to look like floating, broken ship debris in wild space.
Oh my
Usually
God.
something tantalizing, like a vault or something. Or, and they probably
That's
hide near a broken
insane.
ship, and then you pull it on board, and next thing you know, this thing transforms and eats everyone on board the ship.
And then there's mimics on the outside of your ship, just like punching, like
God, can you imagine a swarm of them?
they're just like breaking the windows,
Yeah,
like punching,
it's
like they
like,
become
holy
big fists.
Like which makes that would make breaking down or getting destroyed in space very dangerous, because if you're stranded out there, like let's say I see a shipwreck out there and I'm getting a distress call, fuck that noise. I'm not going near there because it's probably just mimics fucking with me.
Yeah.
Or at least it could be.
Can you confirm you're not a ship full of mimics?
Yeah, indeed.
Ah, man, I don't know, man. I don't know.
And these mimics are intelligent, and they can talk, and they can like they have a high intelligence.
But please, we're dying.
Yeah, we're dying.
I don't know. Can you prove it though?
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Maybe there's a special signature. I mean, did you do good on your nature check?
Yeah, I guess so. That's
the only
it
way.
right there, right?
So that's I guess one of my main questions: discerning the mimic from the real thing. It's obviously in game relies on checks, but like, what are the explanations for those checks? Like, I roll good on my nature check. How do I discern that this is or is not a mimic?
So I don't know if I would use nature for mimics because they're monstrosities, so they're kind of unnatural.
Okay. Well, that's a not natural thing.
Yeah,
That's what you would come up with.
Maybe Arcana check, maybe investigation check, and maybe a really high check to discern, like just the subtle differences between like the real object and like something looks a little bit off. If something looks a little bit off,
Like, look how all the panels of this chest have like this grain that goes this way, but this panel, it doesn't have any
there
grain.
we go. Something like that. That's actually a really good one. Or another thing is, remember that they're covered in this adhesive. Maybe by looking really, really closely, it's like, oh wait, there's something sticking on this.
Oh, like you get like when you get close to it, you can see it kind of change to the adhesive. Like you see a shimmer on it or something
exactly.
like that.
So I would do something along those lines. Yeah.
Okay, that's really cool. Because so what it like if you get too close to a mimic, can it reach out and touch Faith? Faith
yeah.
being you.
Yeah, I'm sure it could. Yeah, I mean, it could move. So yeah, why couldn't it?
So you really like, if you were investigating it, like, is this a mimic? You're fucking done already.
Maybe don't get within 5 feet of it for sure.
Yeah. So the check must be what? It's got to be
I would make
15
it
or higher,
high.
right?
Yeah, I would say it would probably be pretty high because they're experts at what they do.
Yes.
Yeah. So
you'd have to make an expert level move to combat their expert level
indeed
thing.
Indeed.
Okay.
So do you have any more questions about mimics before we get into the stat block?
Do they do magic?
No, not usually.
They just are magic.
So the
kind of?
5e mimic has low intelligence. I
Okay.
know we talked about all these higher intelligence ones, but the 5e mimic has intelligence of 5. It's not thinking about much but food. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So
they just have this kind of like primal cunning when it comes to like how they go about getting their food.
if you see a very, very good looking sword just laying in the middle of the room and you go to grab it, it will just like stab through your hand and then stick to you and then just like consume you like a snake.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
So the 5e monster manual mimic is only challenge rating 2 monster.
I thought it would be higher than that.
No, I think this is the type of creature they kind of wanted to put a little bit in the middle so that you were able to face at low levels and you were able to face a squad of them at the high level.
You know, I kind of like that. Like, give you the low challenge rating so you can scale it as necessary. Like, we give you the base numbers so you can scale it as high as you want.
I still think this suffers from the thing that a lot of 5e monsters suffer from, where there's one version of a thing and there's Like unlike 4E where like there would be the mimic and then there'd be like 3 higher mimics with like
I see.
better abilities and stats.
Like the first one is like your standard wooden box, and then they become like more ornate looking chests as you go.
Yeah, well, for me, it's just like, okay, I understand that you've provided me with the tools to level up a monster's challenge rating, but why not just pump out a stat block for a challenge rating 2 mimic, a challenge rating 5 mimic, and a challenge rating 8 mimic? Like and then give it some extra abilities, name it something slightly different, like a uber mimic or greater mimic or whatever, and like, but neither here nor there.
Uber mimic. It disguises itself as a car and tries to pick you up, but it really just eats you once you get in the passenger seat.
So, anyways, 5e mimic, immunity to acid for some reason. It's also immune to being knocked prone, which makes sense. It's like an amorphous blob in its true form. It has a few abilities, which we've kind of covered. It's got the shape changer ability. We know how that works.
Well, actually, the shape in a combat scenario, what are we talking time here?
So the mimic can use its action to polymorph into an object or back into its true amorphous form. Its statistics are the same in either form. Any equipment it was wearing or carrying isn't transformed. It reverts to its true form if it dies.
Isn't it weird how so many things in D&D take roughly 6 seconds?
I know, right? It's just like
so what I'm thinking was like, I knock the mimic prone, it becomes the amorphous blob, and then it has to use its turn to shape. How does it work?
Okay, if you knock it prone, it doesn't become an amorphous blob. It can if it chooses.
Well, how come I can't knock it prone?
Oh, okay. Why can't you knock it prone? Okay, so let's say it's a wardrobe and you knock it over, then yeah, it becomes an amorphous blob.
Okay.
Also, like, fuck it, you just sprout legs on its bottom now. Now it's a sideways wardrobe with legs at the bottom. You know what I mean? Like,
so the form once you enter combat with the mimic, the form it was in needs to be like the chest opens up and it's a mouth. So that's what its weapon is.
Yeah.
So my imagery of it changing into like a bipedal or quadrupedal with sword arms would take a turn. So it'd be hard to get to that.
I would say, okay, so I think the shape changer thing has to do with full transformation. So if it's going from chest to wardrobe, full action. If it's going from chest to amorphous blob, action. If it's just altering its current form, if it's bringing out the pseudopods, and the mouth, and maybe it needs a leg to pop up so it's not prone, that doesn't take anything.
Okay,
that's just that's how I would run it.
It just becomes that? Are you going to bonus action? Are you going to try to quantify it with action economy?
No.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah.
So then the next ability gets is adhesion, and just for the hard numbers on that, the mimic adheres to anything it touches. That touches it. A huge or small creature adhered to the mimic is also grappled by it. Escape DC 13. Okay. Ability checks made to escape from the grapple have disadvantage.
Ooh, wow.
Here's the false appearance ability. While the mimic remains motionless, it is indistinguishable from an ordinary object. So according to that feature, there is no check you can make.
That's right. I do remember that about. So you can't. You have to touch it.
Yeah.
So you're going to trigger it.
Yeah.
So that makes the mimic infinitely more dangerous.
Well, this is why, I don't know if you've ever heard it said, but this is why on a lot of online forums, they say always bring a 10-foot pole with you into a dungeon. This is probably why.
Oh, yeah.
Touch that motherfucker.
But I mean, like, the mimic knows if you're just hitting it with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, but if you're a fighter with a strength of 18 and you slam the end of a 10-foot pole into its face, it's
going
to
trigger.
Hurt. Yeah.
But are you really going to stab every chest and door?
I wouldn't, but I'm sure there's players out there that would.
That just
Hold on. Ha!
That's metagaming, right?
Oh, yeah. Super metagaming. Yeah. But
people play the game for different reasons.
Yeah. So the last feature it gets is called Grappler. Mimics all have advantage on attack rolls against any creature that they grapple, which is a lot because they're sticky.
So this is like really a know your dungeon master kind of monster. Like, how is your dungeon master going to be a dick and make everything in there a fucking mimic?
Mimics all the way down.
Mimics all the way down.
No, I mean maybe
sword arms everywhere.
I wouldn't want to play in that game, but
I just picture the mimic like attacking. Like, it's not going to move its arm to attack. It's going to make an arm. Like a spear is going to come out of the side of it. And
all I know
somebody.
is one of these days I'm going to put a mimic in our current space game, and it's going to be fucking wild.
Well, now it's going to be a fucking spaceship mimic.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm going to fucking be super mad.
So the only attacks a mimic gets are the pseudopod attack, which is bludgeoning damage, and then a bite attack, which is, I believe, piercing damage with a little bit of acid damage.
I was talking so much about stabbing and sword arms. So just reflavor, I guess.
Oh yeah, you would just have to reflavor it for sure.
But the classic it's just beating the shit out of you.
Yeah,
basically.
this is your classic. I'm gonna bludgeon you to death and eat you.
The pseudopods also act as like scooping mechanisms.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Like dump you into its
Just
mouth.
huge wooden spoons. There you go. So, any questions about mimics before we move on to our pre-long rest segment?
Yes. No, I don't. So they're not doing magic. They just they're not explained by magic. You can't figure out what they are by looking at them. You have to shove a 10-foot pole deep into them, or you have to touch it, pretty much.
Pretty much.
Okay.
There you go. There's your mimic, your classic D&D monster.
I like it.
So before we take a long rest, we got a few announcements we want to make.
Yeah.
I'll let Brian start this one.
So I don't know if we record these ahead of time, so I don't know if we're at 10K on YouTube yet, but we're getting so close.
We are very close.
Help.
Help us, please. If you're not subscribed to us on YouTube, do us a favor and subscribe.
Yeah, please. If you guys
check us out. You might like looking at our faces, or you might not. I wouldn't blame you either way.
Maybe you personally, I don't know. If you're listening to us on SoundCloud or your favorite listening app, just go hit that subscribe button for us. I think that would be awesome.
Also, we are offering things on YouTube that we don't have a subscriber feed for, like our live game Super Quest Saga. So
yes, there is something there for you to do that isn't here on SoundCloud, etc., iTunes. Also, I don't know if we've pumped this in a long time, but now that we're doing this little bit at the end, if you are listening to us on iTunes, please leave us a rate and review. That would be really, really cool.
Yeah. I always love reading the reviews.
We get the nicest the nicest reviews.
They're 5-star all the way down. You guys great things said. Love them.
I might be jinxing it, but they're always 5 stars, and I'm always stoked to read them because they're always very heartfelt and emotional, and hey, thanks so much.
So thank you to everyone who has left a review. I've read them all. And thank you so much.
You make our day. I struggle at how to get to them sometimes. You'll have to show me again.
I will have to show you
but I read them when they come in. We have an email service that helps us read them.
We do.
Also, we mentioned in the short rest, TDC Plays. There's going to be a lot. This is just a little baby that we're going to nurture and grow into something that, me and Will love video games, and everybody on the Dungeoncast crew loves video games. It's a very big part of who we are and what we do here. So if you guys want to go check that out, that would be awesome. It is a separate YouTube channel. Hopefully if there are 10K on YouTube on the Dungeoncast now, I need all of you to jump and go to TDC Plays and hit subscribe there too.
Please do.
Just immediately. Let's not play around. We don't need foreplay on this one. Let's just let's get to where we need to be. Thank you for everybody that has come to Patreon. If we haven't shouted you out yet, we will next time. Speaking of Patreon, we have the new don't say it. We have the new mugs coming out. They're very cool. You can see
a certain somebody on them.
There's a very popular first 100 episode phrase we use here on the Dungeoncast back in the day. We don't use it anymore.
No, it's the no words.
It's the no words. We just don't say it. Okay. Mm-hmm. So now, you guys, the gold tier patrons will be getting that. What do we call it? Electrum tier patrons, the $10 tier. We're running a bi-monthly game. It's called Flashbang Insurgent. It's a superhero game based off of Batman the Animated Series episodes that are being adapted into Dungeons & Dragons, featuring Jake Casada and Steve Tran. Thank you guys so much for being a part of that. It's a really cool project. I'm having so much fun. Super Quest Saga. Let's talk about space.
Yeah, we got a space adventure. You guys should check it out. It airs every other Wednesday on the YouTube channel.
Will has promised to make a Relic spaceship of mimics.
Oh, you have no idea what I've already planned.
It's a brand new planet, and look at it. It's
the
so
whole
cool.
planet's a mimic.
Oh, it ate our ship. Oh, we got a blast. We got a Death Star our way out of here. Hopefully we find Admiral Akbar and he can help us. And thank you everybody on Discord. God damn, you guys are awesome.
Yeah,
I don't know what else to say.
If you guys are interested in awesome D&D community, I think our Discord might be the one for you, because there's people in there talking D&D pretty much 24/7, and everyone out there is really friendly and really cool and have a lot of cool things to say.
Yeah, are there D&D forums you use where you're tired of getting shit on? This isn't that. This is really supportive community that just accepts the dumb shit I say.
It's true.
So it's really helpful for world building. You guys have helped me with Flashbang and Surgeon a lot, so thanks. And my Waterdeep lore and stuff. Thanks for helping me become a better DM. That's what this is all about, getting better at Dungeons & Dragons, getting familiar. Thanks for listening to the show.
And with that being said, I think it's time to call it a game.
Let's call it a game and take our long rest.
We'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
The Dungeoncast.